Hello. All right, let me get a link over here. 2020 fall. There we go. Oh, wait. I don't have my headphones in. My earbuds. Whoops. There we go. Anybody there? Okay, good. Well, here we are. Friday, the last Friday before the last Friday of class, right? And the question of the day is, in which game did Pyramid Head make his debut? Silent Hill 2. Nice. Big survival horror fan myself, in case I haven't mentioned that. Released in 2007, which Cryotech-developed PC game was famed for its high system requirements and was often referenced to as a benchmark for computer hardware? Nobody? 2007. Which Crytek-developed PC game was famed for its high system requirements and was often referenced as a benchmark test for computer hardware? Microsoft Flight Simulator. No, just kidding. Crysis is the yes. Oh, here's a good one. I don't know if I asked this one, but it's a good one. In which video game must the player use cooking and cooperation skills in order to save the Onion Kingdom? All right. I was going to be disappointed if John is rocking this. All right. I'm going to hear from somebody else. Here's a favorite of mine. Which 1996 rail shooter pits the player against the zombified creations of Dr. Curian? Related, but not exactly. Is that your final answer? Come on. If it's not Typing of the Dead, what must it be? It was a movie. That was another movie. An entirely earlier movie. It wasn't, I'll give you a clue. It wasn't The Home of the Dead. The House of the Dead. I'm wondering if I have, I know I have it somewhere. I don't know if I have the original box. That's the question. In which video game did Yoshi make his first appearance? Super Mario World. That's right. The design of the iconic creeper from Minecraft was the result of a failed attempt to create which other Minecraft creature? All right. In Dark Souls, which infamous duo must be defeated, in order for the player character to obtain the Lord Vessel? When this game trivia came out? That's a good question. It was Dragon Slayer Orstein, and Executioner Smough. Smo? All right. A little more modern. The 2012 game Sleeping Dogs is considered a spiritual successor to which other game series for which it originally started development as a sequel? Mm-mm. It's a interesting the theme, the genres there, I think. True crime. Not familiar with that one either myself. All right. So we are in sort of the home stretch here. We're in the home stretch. In fact, next week's classes are traditionally, the last week's classes are traditionally what we call studio classes, which are basically, consider it to be time set aside to work on your final projects. Okay. So what does that mean? That means that there is no official lecture content next week, but I will be here at the normal times, up for any questions whatsoever to demonstrate anything. And if you have any questions over the weekend that you want to see, like, you know, that turn out to be like something that we want to get even more into, by all means, let me know, and we'll have, you know, some formally informal, informally formal things as well. So to kind of cover as much of that as possible. Officially, projects are due on the last day of class. Unofficially, let me know if you're going to have an issue. So there's some leeway with late projects. But I hope to see, I don't want to see any, you know, major train wrecks happening where like nothing is done by that. I don't think that's going to be the case based on where you've all kind of demonstrated your projects thus far, projects 1, 2, and 3. With, you know, some people I've talked to independently being sort of exceptions to things. But for the most part, you know, if I haven't already, you know, if you should all be pretty well aware of where you are and feeling probably pretty good about, you know, your overall feeling on things. I think you've been a good group. Fall groups tend to be that way for some reason. I don't know why. If it's just, you know, people who are that much more eager to jump into intro to game programming as first semester students, or often it's the you know, the people who are transferring from one program into GSAS kind of come in the fall. But for some reason, fall group tends to be ahead of the game. Pardon that pun. So that said, up on LMS, there is the last, if you go to content, of course, there were some specific lecture links. And then towards the end, there is the list of lecture links from Discord, which is really covering all of the last ones. And specifically, I made sure the platform design, joints, and effectors, which is the one we talked about. And also that is the one that has the discussion about the last project in. I also posted a liver than that link over on Discord, which has even if you needed more specifics on things, right? So let's talk about Project 4 again, just to kind of make sure and to kind of I'll fill in the details or any questions. Let's do that first. All right. So the idea of Project 4. Combine everything you've done so far into a wonderful platforming game, hopefully, all the elements. The area of the world should be larger than one screen. Why? Because I want to see you manage some camera motion. I want you to do something with a moving camera. I do not want to see you to use a Cinemachine or other. Remember, you should be using all original code. You can use artwork from other sources. You can use music from other sources, but I want all of the scripts, all of the, you know, there should be no third-party add-ons, plugins. You're free to use Bolt if you want. You can use Bolt. You can have your own C# scripts, but you can't use scripts from other sources. You shouldn't be using path planning from other sources. You shouldn't be using camera motion from other sources, and so on and so on. Remember that. Okay, so it's artwork. Other artwork is okay. Music is okay. If you've done your own original artwork or music, mention that, because that's something I would take into consideration one way or another. Certainly if it's I've seen a lot of things that again, also the fall projects tend to be the more original, which is cool. So anyway, that's the area of the world should be larger than one screen, so that we have this camera moving and following. The player themselves should be required to sort of navigate obstacles and climb, jump. This is about using physics, right? So we want to be using physics with regards to getting around things. We're going to be using physics in the way that the enemies work. We're going to be using physics in terms of the joints and effectors and so on, right? So this is more, we're going to definitely want to see some physics in use in here, right? It's no more just changing the position of the player, changing the position of the enemy. They have to be reacting to things. They have to be exerting forces on their environment so that they can do things like open hinged objects or bounce off of springs or get hit by swinging pendulums of death, that sort of thing. All right. So the player must navigate obstacles and thing that could be neat. There should be at least one puzzle and one trap. How you interpret that is sort of up to you. Okay. Normally these would be things that are using 2D physics, using effectors, joints, triggers, right? So a trigger opens this trap door. You have to open that trap door to get the key. To get the key, then you can open that lock, and right. But you have to, there's sort of a navigating the environment sort of thing. There could be, hidden traps like, okay, if you have to slyly walk across an object to avoid it falling down, or you have to bring a heavy object over to cause it to open, things like that. If you wanted to, you find that there is a spring platform that you're not heavy enough to open, right? So you have to go find a block and push it over onto the object so that it opens, right? That sort of thing. Puzzles, traps, that sort of stuff. There should be one smart enemy type and one dumb enemy type. Normally, the reason I say that because there's one smart enemy and one dumb enemy offers you up the opportunity to be using inheritance, right? So the dumb enemy has just, some simple moves back and forth and takes damage. And then the smart enemy will be based on that, will be derived from that other enemy, or at least some script, some behavior script on there might be derived from the other one. So it would say, okay, it takes the basic damage plus or something, or that sort of thing. It has some additional behavior that it can do there. So basic inheritance is saying, okay, derive one class from another, and in the context of this smart enemy, dumb enemy sort of relationship possibility there. Or if you want to use inheritance in some other way, and you can go above and beyond. All right. So there should be this idea moving from platform to platform. You should be using input axes, right? If you're not using input axes, it's going to be awfully hard. If I am trying to use, I picked up, I'm not on screen right now, so you can't see me holding up my Logitech joystick controller thing here. But you should be using input axes, right? And the input buttons to, for jumping and firing and that sort of thing. You should not be using direct key codes, right? If you haven't already used tile maps, which I think most people now, we're kind of doing tile maps sort of ahead of time, and incorporating them a lot more into the top-down shooters as well. But encourage everyone to use tile maps to make life easier. It might be a combination tile maps for the basic background and the basic platforms that you just climb on, and then have other objects which are in the world which don't necessarily need to be on a tile map, because they are more like independent objects in the world. That's totally fine. If you haven't already used animation, then you should certainly use animation. Sorry, I have a little drink here. Today we're having a black cherry Waterloo sparkling water. That's the drink of the day. Sponsored by Waterloo. No, sorry. So some animation could be very, very simple animation in this case. You can figure out, is the player moving left and right? Is the player jumping? Is the player falling? is the player dying? Did the player get killed? That sort of thing. So you can use that sort of animation. Also, your enemies moving left and right can have simple animations. I saw a couple of animation trees, which look pretty intense. I'm not sure exactly what happened with those. If you're still having issues, let me know, and we can kind of backtrack on some of that. But you should be using some type of animation in there. It definitely helps the game a lot. Don't skip on sound effects. By all means, have sounds in your games, right? It completes the game. We haven't done anything really, really crazy with regards to sound, but just the basic use of games so that you have that feedback to the user about when they're doing the right thing, or maybe there's something that they're made aware of by you have a ticking, for example. You trigger a switch and you hear tick 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 tick, and it speeds up to let them know that some time is running out. Things like that. It can be a very, very important part of the game. And we want to publish our final game. Now, whether you choose to publish the whole project that has, your whole menu of, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in it, or you just want to publish your final game, that's up to you. More or less going to hope that, it is your final game that you publish on there. The nice reason for that is that if I run into any issues, I know normally at the end of the semester, people become really, really hard to get a hold of. And this semester is a little bit odd and different because everyone is sort of, nailed to their desks or nailed to their computers. But there's always that case of, suddenly I can't get through to somebody because the latest version and the Unity cloud is having an issue and so on. The nice thing about publishing it on itch.io, even if I can't see the code, I can still play the game and see how it's supposed to be working. So if something weird happened with regards to LMS and the Unity collaboration and so on, nice to have it on itch.io so that it's I can see that it's working as you think it works because you can see it there as well. I'm also going to have a channel specifically in the 2020 fall as the project gallery. You can see if you go up to the main Intro to Game Programming channel, there is an itch project gallery from semesters past, and you can see some of the things that other people have done previously as well. Differing results, so if you're looking for inspiration, last spring was a little spottier because we, the whole pandemic thing happened awfully quick, and I don't know, outdo last spring, outdo their projects. Just kidding. Well, I'm sort of kidding. So we want to raise the bar, always raise the bar. All right, there is a link here to a YouTube video that shows specifically the steps of putting something on itch.io. It's not a tremendous ordeal. It really just is, making sure that you have the build script set up, or not the script, the build component installed. That's probably the trickiest part. And then you're going to say, make sure that you're building with the scene, the main scene and things in the project. And then it's going to create a zip file that you then submit to itch, and it'll put it all in the right place. And double check it. You'll get to run it. It'll all be great. It'll work fantastically. So that link is here as well. Now, look at the notes and resources channel in 2020 fall. You will also see a bunch of things with regards, I just put up at least 3 videos, sort of as inspiration. One was the second half of the last lecture where we were doing some things with joints, with the friction joints and distance joints, and some of the different ones. But also from previous classes, I put up my video for doing specifically spring joints, where I recreated the hook shot from Zelda. And this time around, I think I mentioned in one of the classes the way to use the the line renderer to actually get that to look much cooler than the previous version, right? The version that I demonstrate back in the April video, I think I just used the plain vanilla line renderer without using without using the cool line shader. So that's something to be aware of. But either way, you don't have to get that fancy. So there's the hook shot, the Zelda hook shot, and also the one of my other favorites, the swinging ball of death, using various hinge joints to create these sort of swinging pendulums, mace, sort of thing that can bounce and hit the character, that sort of thing. So those are two pretty fun uses of joints to create sort of an active, real kind of showcase part of the game, as opposed to something simple like hinged doorway or sliding panel or something. If you want to get fancy, and feel free to invent your own kind of stuff as well, using these different physics components. You can do a lot with them without writing any code. That's one of the coolest things about the hinges and effectors. I forget, somewhere in my playlist there's also creating a fountain, the kind of a rideable fountain. I think I showed you that in class as well, when I was demonstrating the Bayat platformer a few games ago, or a few classes ago, where you would set it, trigger a switch. The switch turns on a buoyancy effector and a particle system that are kind of, the particle system provides the look of the fountain, and the buoyancy effector applies the upward force to the character. Another reason that the character should be using physics for motion, because if you're relying just entirely on changing position, if you'd have a hard time creating buoyancy to the character and that sort of stuff. But using those force effectors to do things. All right, so that's why you really want to use that. So, any questions on the project and where we're at? Anything specific today? No. Am I in the wrong? Anyone wants to write anything in 2020 fall? Let's see in there. I guess we got today's link. Also had the itch.io. There's the link in there to the video for the itch.io piece. Feel mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, effectively, I mean, the two, obviously it's an equation. So the ultimate behavior of just the player, either one, it's going to be 6 of one, half dozen of another, as they say. What is going to be more of a factor, it depends what else can act on the player, right? If the player's just standing there and you want something to smash into the player and cause it to move, then how much you affect the mass of the player may be important versus the gravity, right? Because if the player is not already moving, the mass is going to have an impact in all directions. So if the swinging ball of death comes and tries to knock the player to the side, right, gravity doesn't have a horizontal component, whereas mass will be calculated into the effect of the swinging ball of death hitting the player. That mass will have an impact. Pardon the pun on that one. It's a good one though, right? So it depends, right? With regards to falling, either one, it's not going to matter so much. But right. All of the other physics effects, you'd want to change the mass. If it's just about falling, then you might just change the gravity. Yeah. Okay. So it always depends. It always depends. So let's see, where were we? Platformer or underscore platformer? I think we're... What happened? Did I not save the game? Was that the day my computer crashed again? It's a good thing I like recreating these scenes. I'm just going to go through everything until I find it. I don't think it's there. Okay, well, we're going to be like that. So the good thing would be that normally, even when things crash, the scripts tend to still be around. So there is my simple controller is there, but for some reason my scene is not. So hopefully you are all being more careful because you don't want to rewrite your thing every time. Sometimes it's a good example, a good exercise, though, to always recreate everything every time. All right. Fall 2020 GSAS 2540. Yeah, this is the place. It should have been here. Should have been here. Let that be a lesson to me. Okay, so what should we demonstrate today? I want to talk about this notion of the player and jumping and being grounded. Okay. You may have a situation where the player is, you don't want the player to be able to jump infinitely. So this is a classic problem, the double, triple, quadruple jump sort of thing. We don't want that to happen. So let's create a real simple game, yet again, from scratch. And try to tackle this. All right, so we're going to create a tile map. We're going to open up a tile palette. We are going to draw some basic things in the scene. So we'll go ahead and grab this, and we'll just draw along the bottom of the screen something to be, and up here is going to be something we want to jump to. Okay. So let's, there it is in our scene. And all right. So we have our basic scene here. And we will also put a character in the scene, and we will use the good old hero from the scene. And we have our hero walk side. And we will grab hero walk side 1, bring him over here, drop him in our scene. There he is. All right. Add component. We're going to create a rigid body 2D on him, and we give him default values except for freeze rotation. We're going to freeze the rotation so he doesn't spin around accidentally. We're going to give him a collider, and we'll give him a capsule collider. Oh, wrong one. See, it gave me this because I tried to put a 3D physics object on there. Used to not do that. I used to just let you do stupid things like that. So in this case, it was nice enough to tell me, yes, you don't want to put the wrong capsule collider on there. You want to put the right one on there. So let's go ahead. Let's put it on the player here, and we'll kind of shrink it down just enough. We can kind of zoom in on him here. like so. All right. And we also want to go to the tile map and add to the tile map. We want to put a, what do I want to put? A tile map collider 2D. And to smooth out the tile map collider 2D, I also want to put a composite collider 2D. And remember, when I put a composite collider 2D, it also adds a rigid body 2D because that's the way that works. And in this case, because it's going ahead and putting that, I'm going to, for now, I'm just going to freeze its position and rotation, right? If I only cared about the player hitting it, I could go ahead and say, all right, let's turn it into a static. I think that's going to work because the player is a dynamic rigid body. Dynamic rigid bodies always collide with kinematic and static ones, right? It's a question of the interaction between them. So in this case, since it is completely static and it is not actually participating in physics other than being a collider, I can go ahead and just make it static. All right, so now our player is there. Now I also want to make it so that the player can walk. So let's turn the player, let's make the hero a real hero first off. Give it a good name there. And we had this simple controller. Right, let's take a look at simple controller and let's save it. Save. Simple controller. So what the simple controller does is it uses the input axis, it uses the horizontal axis to set a velocity to move left and right. Right. So this is the kind of a very, very simple version, and it is participating in physics. Ideally, I want to be changing this velocity here, even here, to according to input velocity. All right. So I could just take these two bits here and put them in here. So you'll notice here it says input.x get axis horizontal. That's in my update. And it's best practice, good practice, to be changing things that are related to velocity according to, things that are related to, physics and rigid bodies, you want to change them in fixed update. Now, you'll notice here, input velocity.y, I could change that actually in either place. It really, it's probably best to do it here because I want to grab it right before I potentially change it for the x. So we'll do this. So we're grabbing the y velocity and using that for our input velocity.y, but we are changing velocity otherwise according to this x up here, right? We're going to change it in update, right? Yes. Okay. You probably were not remembering to set jump back to false again. You set it false initially, but then you have to make sure to only add it once or only add it. Well, let me check to make sure that this is working okay. And let's think about why that might be. Now, we may very well, for another reason, solve it, but through another means. Okay, so we'll hold on to that thought for just a moment. All right. So the player's going to fall, And then I should be able to jump, and I'm not being able to jump here at all. Okay, I'm able to move left and right, but there is no jumping. So let's see. So if input axis dot jump is greater than or equal to 1, jump flag is true. So jump flag should be adding a force up here. Let me go ahead and do this. Let's see if before I change that. All right, play. Not able to jump at all. What happened? Or it might be that let's see, I have a rigid body on my player. Oh, no, freeze rotation on my player. Math linear. All right, well, this is one good case where I'm going to say, all right, let me set a breakpoint just to make sure that code is being called, first off. So what might be happening is that input velocity here is being back to where we were before we started changing things today. Try it one more time here. Interesting. All right. So I'm going to debug. And in here, in case I don't see it, I'm going to say attach Unity debugger. There we go. All right. And that is, normally you probably don't see this too often. It depends if you're going back and forth and doing a lot of other Visual Studio stuff. Sometimes you can get a little bit confused. So we'll tell it to do that. All right. And now I should be looking over here. All right, I hit that. Get component rigid body 2D. And we'll say continue. So that's getting called. All right, I'm going to disable the breakpoint and say continue. And just for the heck of it, I'm going to actually stop the game, turn off maximize on play so that I can change. I'm going to go in here and maybe my jump force just isn't big enough. Let's set that really, really big. Just in case, just to see what's going on. It certainly looks like I'm adding it, but maybe just, yeah, there we go. All right, so I didn't have enough jump force, right? So the problem we're facing here is that if I hold down the key would fly off forever because I'm applying force all the time, anytime, right, that it's being held down. Now, one thing I could do is have sort of a flag here to say, if I haven't already pressed jump or said it's a false. But the thing I really want to demonstrate is this notion of grounding, is to check, is the player grounded? Okay, so are the feet of the player touching the ground? All right. So how do we do that? So we have the player here, and the idea would be that the player, we'll start the player off. We'll just say we want to have a location directly underneath the player. And so if I look at the player, normally you'll see there is 0, 0 for the player right at the center here, as opposed to the bottom. Right. So that's one thing. So what I might want to do is actually, and this is sort of a sneaky thing to do, is that if I want to offset this graphic here, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, okay, here's the player. I'm going to create a empty object that is a child of the game object. Right. And that game object is really where I'm going to take this sprite render, and let's see if I think I can say, I'll say copy component, come to this game object and say, can I say paste? I thought I could say paste. Let me paste. Copy component. Oh, what do you know? All right. So paste component as new. All right, there we go. So now we have I'm going to remove this sprite render from this one here. Remove component. You'll see it still has the one there. And now I'm going to take this second one, and I'm going to move the Y up. So compared to the actual hero object, I'm going to move it up a little bit more. So now 0, 0 is going to be right at his feet. Right below his feet. 0.8. And I'm doing this just sort of as a convenience, right? So now I can refer to 0, 0 for the hero, and I know that's at the bottom of this player, right? It's really just a convenience. Now the capsule collider is at the bottom, which is kind of weird. So what I might need to do in this case is also change the capsule collider to be there as well. Nothing else should need to change, right? So I had to move the capsule collider to be where that was. And also now I can refer to 0, 0 as being that point of impact, right? That's the important part. This now is where things are, right? So we can now come back over here and say, well, if it's time to see if I can jump, I want to check something, right? I could check for a collision. That might be the one in intuition might be, oh, let me put a check or on collision enter, and then the moment I collide with it, then go ahead and say, oh, okay, set a field grounded to be true. And that would be one way to do it, but it gets a little bit a little bit tricky and you're kind of managing flags and things like that, and by the collision. Instead, what I like to do is to use our friend casting, right? So we had physics 2D. You want to make sure we're using physics 2D. And let's use this thing called circle cast. Okay. So what circle cast will allow us to do, let's see, we have an origin, a radius, and a direction. Right? Origin, radius, and direction. So the origin will be transform position. Right? We're going to have an object right at the we're going to cast a circle right at the feet of the player with a radius of just a tiny little radius, 0.1. And the direction is going to be, actually at this point, we don't even need to do much in the way of direction, but let's, for the sake of argument, we'll say transform dot, can we stay down? Transform up, but we want to negate that, okay, meaning down. Okay. So now we're going to be casting a circle at the player's feet with a radius of 0.1 pointing down. Now, there are other versions of circle cast as well. So you see it says 2 of 8. Now, normally if I have direction, it also wants a distance. Okay, well, that's another option. The first one is direction with distance. Fancier. Origin, radius, direction, contact filter. Then we have origin, radius, direction, distance, layer mask. So what I really want to do is see, is the player touching the ground? So specifically, I want to look for a layer that's called the ground, right? So let's be fancy about that. So I'm going to say the distance is going to be pointing down, distance of 0, because that's going to be our circle is right there at the bottom. But now I have to say layer mask dot name to layer. And I need to give it a name of what layer I want the player to try to collide with. I'm going to make up a name called ground. All right. So we'll come back over here and we'll say, well, everything that is here, this tile map here, if I come here and I say, click my tile map, I might call them platforms, maybe even base platforms. But the important thing is I need to have a layer here, and I will add layer, and I will call that layer ground. Lowercase, just like it was in the other one. So now, when this gets called, this will check to see, does that. So I can use this. Here. And say, okay, if the user is trying to jump, I could say if this returns true, then we're allowed to jump. Okay. If this circle cast succeeds, meaning I have hit something underneath the player, then I'm allowed to jump. Okay, let's save that, and we'll try it out. All right, so the player will fall. The player jumps. Oh, wait. The player's jumping all over the place. So something's not quite right. Did I not save that code? No, simple controller got saved. So, well, I don't need brackets around this one since it's just one statement. Okay. Name to layer ground. I must be doing something wrong on my. I'm going to give this a tiny little distance just to make sure that it's not saying, oh, you didn't cast it into the scene because you gave it a direction, but no distance. I wonder if there's a version. Let's see. Ideally, I don't know if I need that, do I? No, it doesn't like that one at all. Back to that. Now the hero. Oh, wait, what did I do wrong here? Layer default. Layer default. There, did I do something? Did I not create that? Okay. That's even more odd. Positive collider. Ground. I'd be surprised if it triggered that even though I, all right, so there I am. Continue. So I did something bad with my circle cast here. So circle cast, origin, radius, direction, distance, layer mask. And when in doubt, we go over to the internet. And we say physics to the past unity. Point in space which the circle originates, the radius of the circle, the vector representing the direction of the circle, the contact filter, the maximum distance over which to cast the circle. I thought this one also returned true or false, maybe. Let's see. All right, here's what we're going to do. Sorry, I was over in the other window, but let's do this. We're going to say just this should give us no, sorry, that's another slightly different version, but I thought I could just take the, is it not circle cast? Is it returns a raycast hit 2D with a reference to the collider that is hit by the box. I thought I could just reference that as a, all right, let's be a little bit more explicit in our, so we're going to say if this equals null, or excuse me, does not equal null. So the result of the operation is always true. Okay, here's since a value of type bool is never equal to null. All right, so we should be getting a bool. Well, I could draw a circle at that position, certainly, but that's not really going to tell us whether or not the function succeeded. So what am I doing wrong here? Because if we look inside, for example, our populate dungeon, here's where we said, okay, cast a circle at this position with this radius that's not moved. And said, okay, if it's false, we're allowed to place an object. So the question is, why aren't we able to do that in this case? So or why is it always returning true? Is there really the... I guess the question is, let's look at this tile map here. If we look at this tile map, there's that tile map collider. For a moment, let's turn off this composite collider. And that rigid body 2D. Because it's giving me the impression that, oh, that's not it. Why does it think that that collision is happening? All right. That wouldn't have been. That should have been set to used by composite. And that could have been set, but I don't think that would still. Interesting. So this is always returning true, even when we are jumping and so circle cast. What circle cast? What are you doing to me here? To origin. All right, let's give it some options here. So origin, radius, and direction. And the only ones where we start to deal with a layer mask are the ones with direction, distance, and layer mask. Origin, radius, direction, distance, layer mask, and min depth. I think I know the problem. This name to layer, I didn't say name to layer is going to give me, given a layer name returns the layer index, which is not what I want. I actually want a layer mask. So what did I do wrong here? So Unity layer mask. All right. There we go. So what I wanted to do here is say layer mask get mask. Right. Given a set of layer names as defined by either a built-in or user layer in the returns the equivalent layer mask. Okay, so yeah. What this was doing is it was saying, okay, when I said layer mask dot name to layer, if I look in here and I look at my tile map, you'll see that next to ground it says 13, right? 13 is the layer number or the layer index. what I really wanted, and this is where a little bit more computer sciencey here. So in order to express a group of these, I need to have basically a mask or a bit field that can represent any number up to potentially 32 layers, right? Because I can collide with more than one layer. So I use basically a 32-bit number, which with each one of those bits representing a potential layer. So instead of passing it the number 13, I have to pass it the equivalent 32-bit number with the 13th bit set. Did that sort of follow? Right. So I should be. The problem is that a mask looks an awful lot like an integer, which looks a lot like an index. So I just forgot. So that should be get mask, not name or name to layer, right? I don't want the layer index. I want the layer mask, right? So that's going to be a far different number. That's going to be basically, what's the number? 2 to the 13th is our minus 1. That's our number that would be a weird number. All right, this is going to work now. So we come back in here, we press start. Whoops, not that start. Not that start. We're going to press this start, and everything's going to be great. That's how sure I am of this. Okay. I'm frantically pressing. Can you all hear that? All right, my wonderful mechanical keyboard. So it will only add force when I'm close enough to there. Now there's actually a little bit of leeway, so it may add a little bit more than, I may need to tune that, because it's going to basically be whenever it's within that range. And let's see, that's pretty. Obviously not good enough, because there's no way I can jump up to this next thing. So we need to tune. We need to tune. We need to come along and say, well, let's go to our hero again. And first off, I want his speed to be a lot speedier. And I want him to jump twice as high. So we'll give him twice as much force. We'll see how that works. Hey, come on. Be careful. I was holding the button down, so the moment I hit it. Now this is fun. Like, the one thing you'll notice, he doesn't jump infinitely when he hits his head there, right? Because the hitbox that we're interested in is at his feet. So if he manages to get up there, so close. Come on, fella. That's not fair. I'm gonna have to tune him up a little bit more. 250, or make this an impulse and give it a one-shot kind of deal. I could always do that. Now, this is also an odd thing. Why isn't speed changing? Oh, that's not being multiplied. So now he's going to go running off at some kind of insane rate. I don't want to do that. Be careful. Back to our game here. Let's turn that back to 3. And leave our jump force at 250. Ooh, what just happened? Oh, I multiplied the wrong thing by speed. Yeah. I tripled his gravity as well, which was not good, effectively. Or tripled his downward velocity. So he fell so fast he fell right through the. He kind of violated some laws of physics there. That was not great. All right, fix that. Fix that. Unfortunately, a lot of game engines, after a while, it does sort of become just you have to, certain things you've got to sort of memorize. All right, there we go. So we can jump off of there. Now, you'll notice when he's in the air, he can change directions, which is sort of violating physics a little bit. So to make it even a little bit more realistic, I should say, well, what should really happen is I should only allow any of that touching the ground. And so now it will ignore the joystick if he's not touching the ground. It will ignore all of this if he's not touching the ground. So the moment he leaves the ground, I'll have no control over his motion. All right. Okay. Up near nothing. So I can't try, once he's falling here, I can't start moving backward until I hit the ground. Right. It's a question of, I mean, that is a sort of a design decision, but realistically, probably, how much can you change your direction if you have nothing to push against? Rhetorical question. You can decide that you can decide that for yourself. If your player has some sort of, maybe he has a jetpack, in which case then he should be allowed to do that. So say we had we want to change things up here. So what we'll do is we'll say, we'll give him something fancy. We'll say our hero, if our hero grabs this coin, all right, there's our little coin. We'll put it right there. And we will, so the coin, in order to interact with the coin, we're going to have to put a collider on the coin. And it'll just be a simple circle collider 2D. And we'll say is trigger. All right. We will, tag it as, I'm going to add a tag. I'm going to take the simple route here and I'm going to call it jetpack. Tag that jetpack. So we'll come back to our player and our hero, simple controller here, and we will say void on whatever here. Unity, are you freaking out on me now? All right. Called when the collider 2D enters. Okay, good. doing all, normally it would say game object and it would give me the information about the collision. Visual Studio is acting slightly odd. So we'll just say, if you trigger, if, here's where I want to say, collision 2D, right? Unity is making it really difficult for me. On trigger enter Unity, or on trigger enter 2D, I should say. It's going to be careful. Okay, that's being passed collider 2D. All right. Call dot compare tag, and I'm looking for jetpack. Is this game object tagged with this tag? So if that's true, I'll say jetpack equals true. We should come up here, have a bool, jetpack, false. And say, okay, if this, or we could say if jetpack or this. So now I've got two cases where it's going to say, if jetpack is true, do this stuff, or I'm touching the ground, do this stuff, right? So anytime jetpack is true, this part over here becomes optional. If jetpack is false, this part over here is not optional, right? So jetpack is going to be set to true if we have grabbed the jetpack. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say you can only jetpack once, right? So you get one use of the jetpack. No visuals at this, but imagine. So is that gonna? No, that's not gonna work. Yeah, we'll take that out. We'll just make infinite jetpack if you grab the jetpack. What you should do is you should have could be a timer that runs out, could be a number of uses, could be, any number of different things that decide when should the jetpack get set back to false, right? If you collide with something, does it get set to false? Is this a switch? We could do that. We could say, okay, if you collide with a jetpack, then it should be a exclusive or. Right. So this will flip the value. So we'll come here. Did I set that right? Whoa. So I grabbed that jetpack and got to shoot way up in the air. And if I don't get the jetpack, normal. Be careful, the jetpack is pretty powerful. Okay, jetpack is now set to true here. All right, be careful. So this might be a circumstance where you got to tune things, because now the problem is I'm always allowed, every 60th of a second, I get add force, fly up in the air. So I got to be redesign some of that use of the of this now, so that I'm not always jetpacking up. Okay, but the basic thing I wanted to demonstrate was this notion of, okay, how do I keep the player from potentially double jumping or, doing, odd things like that. Now, here's another favorite technique of mine. Anybody have any questions on that? Or I'll show you another fun thing that I like to do. Yep. Well, I didn't actually. Well, I what I really did is I offset the game object by 0.8, which is the sprite. So let's call this game object sprite, right? So the sprite is the thing that had an offset here. If I click on the hero, which is my actual game object for the hero, it hasn't moved, but the sprite has been offset from 0, and the capsule collider has also been offset. If you wait. So if you come over here and you change this offset, I don't know why that would happen. That should only be I have no explanation for that. Yeah, that object should be, or this offset of the capsule collider should only be relative to that. Now, if you So here, click on your hero. And right now, just go over to, capsule collider, edit collider. And if you slide this offset, right, nothing should change. If you turn edit collider off, or excuse me, yeah, even if you turn edit collider off and you change the offset, it should move independently. The only reason it might move, like if I push this down here and I hit play, the player will move because this is all offset. So it'll push that up. Because now I've effectively moved the capsule to be centered at, where the so there is sort of relationship while the game is playing and physics is being enforced. It will push that, but it shouldn't. You shouldn't be seeing the capsule collider having an impact on the position of the hero's normal position, or affecting. I mean, the sprite object that's the child of the hero should only have a sprite on it, no capsule collider, nothing like that. Right? It's just an image, and it's just offset by some magic amount. So, yeah, I'm afraid I don't have an answer. Try recreating the object. Try to is like some kind of odd behavior there. I don't have an answer for. Well, if you're animating the sprite, it has to be on that. Yeah. Or it should be on that. Yeah, I guess technically anywhere the sprite image is, that should be, if you're animating the sprite there, then that's where it should be. If you were trying to move the object, if you're animating some other parameter that's not the actual, just the image being animated, then it might be on the hero. But I would keep if it's animating the sprite, then it should be on the same object as the sprite. Yes. All right. So just another real fun, I think fun. I don't know. I like this. Imagine for a moment that we were to do something where we said, all right, the hero here has a collider on it, and the collider hits the ground, and that's all well and good. But let's do something interesting. So when the player comes around, like maybe we have these things going on here, right? We have this layer and this layer. What if we create another tile map here? And this will just be a tile map. And we're going to call this one upside down. Right. Very Stranger Things, right? We have the real world and we have the upside down. Right. So let's put something in the upside down. So let's open tile map, 2D, tile palette here. And let's decide that the upside down is going to look slightly different here. We got to choose something cool. I don't know if I like that as much. Let's see. Maybe that. Okay, so here's the upside down. And I'm going to put the upside down here, here, and here. So somehow I goofed. I didn't. Did I not? Let's erase that. Let's erase the upside down from the tile map. Let's make sure to put it on the upside down. So we're going to create this. We're going to paint that on here. All right, good enough. So here's the upside down. And what we want to do with the upside down is we'll give it its own tile map collider. And we'll give it its own composite collider. And we'll go through the normal. So it's got its own tile map. It's going to say, okay, used by composite for the tile map collider. And the rigid body 2D, we're going to make that. We'll even go so far as to say that it's static. Now, so what I want to do is to say, if this guy comes along and he hits the upside down, I want him to stick to the upside down. And I want him to be upside down, right? So let's see, how would we do that? All right. So first off, we'll go into our hero controller, our simple controller, and say, okay, void. Why is it not? It just doesn't want to suggest functions for me here. On collision enter 2D. And let me make sure I'm doing the right thing. Always have a reference open in the other page, in the other window here. On collision enter 2D, collision 2D. See, this is one thing that's weird. This one returns a collider 2D, so this is to be aware of. That's why I'm being cautious here. This one returns a collision 2D. Right, so now it's decided, all right, we're gonna do that. So if the player collides with the upside down, what we want to have happen is we want to say physics 2D dot gravity equals, and now gravity is a vector 2. And it would normally take an X and a Y. And normally that would be, let's see here, if we go over here and we look and we said project, nope, not that project. We will go over to Unity and we said edit project settings. Under physics 2D, you'll see that we have gravity 0, negative 9.81. So in the game now, I'm saying, all right, if the player somehow collides with this, gravity is going to be set to the opposite. So that's what's going to happen the moment we collide with that. We're going to have to be a little bit more sophisticated as we work through this and avoid hitting that our magic jetpack thing. I should have just taken that out. But let's see if we can avoid the jetpack. Whoop. Something didn't happen. Somehow gravity immediately got switched. Hero on collision enter 2D. Oh, well, we have to tell it what to, we want to say if call dot game object compare tag and this one we're going to call down and do that. So we need to tag our upside down. And we're also going to tell it that, okay, upside down is still ground, but it's also this new thing called upside down. Let's see how that works. So hopefully we don't fly up in the air now. All right, we're still down here. We jump like normal. Take a running start, jump. We're going to hit this, jump. You'll notice we hit the top here, and we immediately are now stuck. Because gravity is pointing up, and we are no longer grounded because our feet are there. So we're not doing too well, right? We're kind of stuck here. So how do we fix that? Well, let's see. We could say, well, we need to do more than just turn gravity. We need to also rotate the game object. So transform dot rotate, and we're going to see our transform rotate. And we have the option of 3 Euler angles, applies rotation of Euler z degrees around the z-axis, x degrees on the x-axis, and so on. All right. So we're going to say 0, 0, 180. So this should rotate our player, meaning that his feet should now be facing up, and his circle collider will be also touching the new surface, what we think the surface is now. Oh. What did I do wrong here? There we go. Time we got 4:07. All right. So this is hopefully inspiration. I certainly don't expect everyone to do the exact same thing. All right. And now he's there. A little bit of a glitch when he hits. Fix that. So then we also have to have the opposite, where if he hits the real world, we turn gravity around the other way as well. See if I can get him to jump high enough. Oh, yeah, there's a bug. We have to be careful on this collision to make sure he's not, kind of double glitching and changing gravity over and over and over again. Weird that he got through there. I think he's probably doing some additional rotations here. We should be careful of that. He probably collides and then collides again, and that's what's causing that extra rotation. So got to be set some flags and semaphores to kind of smooth things out. So just an interesting idea. If you want to go in that direction, I always found that to be kind of a fun one. I've done that a couple of different ways. That was one of the first times I did Game Dev 1. We actually did that. You can do all sorts of things with manipulating gravity and manipulating time. Just like we said there, we did. So here I set gravity. You can also do things like time scale, which is going to change. You can slow down physics, saying things like times equals 0.8. So now every time we collide, time is going to slow down, maybe. Weird thing like that. So you can manipulate time and space if you want in Unity. You can do all sorts of things, like even these tile maps here can have things like physics and joints. And we showed the case where they had hinges and things, but you could have buoyancy. You could have springs that make levels springier and so on, so that the whole world kind of bounces up and down, all that kind of fun stuff. So use your imagination, try things, break things, discover things, get to know your way around Visual Studio. Have Visual Studio break for you, because it'll usually do that once in a while. Kind of really surprised. I don't know what mode I have this in, where it's sort of, it knows it's just not, like autocomplete is not working for me, which is painful. Any questions? Everyone's set to have a great weekend. Otherwise, I think you've got lots of stuff to do. How's the rest of the semester? Is it the things, everyone have lots of finals? Is it all set? We all good? I don't know where I just posted that. Okay. Have a great weekend. Have fun with it. Do things, try to be methodical, try to comment your code. It's good to have that in there. I know during demonstrations, I'm trying to go through things really fast and improvise, which hopefully keeps it interesting. If I just said that they had the exact same lecture every time. Someone had all right, I'll come back and try to find out who's having problems. All right, you too. Have a great weekend. Yeah, I can't imagine what you're describing just doesn't make enough sense for me to figure out what exactly is happening there. It just doesn't